Welcome friends. This is a web novel. Imagination is key to enjoy it fully. Please like, subscribe and gives your feedback.
I received another enchantment for 2 tokens. Enchanting menu. New enchantment. Destroyer Eye. Increases the power and cleave of the tool by 80%. The new enchantment seemed to be better than the reliability eye enchantment. It gave me the option to switch them, so I was left with only the lightweight eye enchantment and the destroyer eye enchantment on my silver pickaxe, costing me a total of 6 tokens. The sun was pretty much completely set, so I had to make some preparations for the night. I had quite a few minions now, and I could somewhat rely on my elite minions to take care of the zombies during the night. I put all 3 elites minions on standby and got them to separately command the rest of my minions with their minion leadership abilities. With that, I could sleep with at least some certainty. I had a quick look at my minion tab. Advanced System Controls. Resource Division, 62 minions. 3x Woodcutter Minion. 3x Miner Minion. 17x Scout Minion, Mining. 10x Scout Minion, Woodcutting. 6x Scout Minion, Resource Gathering. 6x Scout Minion, Hunting. 1x Scout Minion, Farming. 8x Basic Scout Minion. Combat Division, 35 minions. 1x Advanced Warrior Minion. 1x Warrior Minion. 6x Scout Minions, Swordplay. 6x Scout Minions, Archery. 12x Scout Minion, Combat. 9x Basic Scout Minion. Utility Division, 6 minions. 3x Builder Minion. 2x Basic Scout Minion. 1x Minion Manager. I had over 100 minions now, especially with the strength of my elites. I shouldn't have to worry about being overrun during the night. I set up a few lines of code and let the minions take watch over the night. Chloe and I returned to our huts as I lay down on the bed. I had crafted a slightly more comfortable cover, but I still didn't have a blanket as such. I could have made some animals into a cover of some sort, but I preferred to just keep building my army. Comfort wasn't really that great of an issue for me anyways. As time went on, I heard the groaning of zombies outside. It was then changed to the sound of sword swinging and flesh ripping. To the sound of the battle, I slowly closed my eyes. If anything major were to happen, one of my elites would inform me, and with that, the world slowly went into nothingness as I drifted off to sleep. I was softly awoken by nothing in particular. With my new enchanted, silver pickaxe, I prepared to go off to the mountain once again to grind for more rocks. At this rate it might take weeks until I had enough. At the moment, the best I could do was get Chloe and my minions to gather as many rocks as I could and for me to dig at the mountain. I had planned for Chloe to check out the settlements nearby, but I assumed that she would be able to do multiple things at once. Whatever the case, I decided to leave that to her while I went out to gather more resources. My body was a bit sore as I pulled myself up from the bed. The mining the previous day had taken quite a toll on my arms. However, my pickaxe was significantly lighter now, so it would be easier to use. I opened the rough, rustic wooden door of the hut and pushed it as it screeched on its crudely built hinge. It was probably around time for me to upgrade my living quarters. However, I wanted to focus on my weapon first and deal with this later. I began trekking towards the mountain once again as I sent my minions out on their respective expeditions. Most of them were slightly injured due to the night, but there weren't any casualties or major injuries. I had set up groups of 4, with 3 resource-gathering minions and 1 combat minion to guard. It was a good way to keep the damage to my minions at a minimum during these unstable times. After a few minutes, I arrived at the lonely mountain I was at the previous day. Practically nothing had changed. I made my way to the same spot I stood at yesterday and extracted my enchanted, silver pickaxe, from my inventory. I raised it, tensing my body, before swinging hard into the dense, tough rock of the mountain. The pickaxe crashed into the stone and a small gust of cleave scraped some of the surrounding rock off of the side. Particles and fragments of rocks were scattered across the floor as my pickaxe smashed into them with quite a strong force. +2 rocks. +3 rocks. +1 rocks. +1 rocks. One single swing had collected much more rocks than it did yesterday. It had collected almost 3 times as many rocks in one single swing, and the swings were also much easier to do. My resource gathering speed had increased significantly, so I continued to smash into the uneven, rocky wall. Swing after swing, I smashed into it, littering the ground with countless pieces of dust and fragments of rock. With every swing, my pickaxe flew into the rock, smashing it and cleaving all around the area, eventually gathering quite a lot of rocks. I continued for a few more minutes before I needed to take a break. Even with the lightweight eye enchantment, the pickaxe still wasn't exactly light. In about an hour, I managed to gather over 500 rocks. It was enough to craft another miner minion. I shook my arms a little bit before I stood up once again. I wiped the dust off of my pants and continued to swing my pickaxe into the rough stone edge. Again and again, my pickaxe continuously smashed into the rock. The satisfying alerts of rocks being collected were quite motivational to look at. I continued at it, swinging in a smooth circular motion. I was beginning to get used to the movement and could do it more quickly than I was before. For almost an entire hour, I hammered away at the mountainside. I took another break to catch my breath and rest my arms. At this rate, I might be able to get the sword within a week. I continued mining for the rest of the long day. Several hours later, I looked up at the setting sun. I had just spent an entire day mining for rocks. I had just stared at this plain, gray rock wall for 6 or 7 hours straight, smashing it with a pickaxe every once in a while. Well, it was going to be worth it. In total, I collected almost 4,000 rocks. My arms had no more strength in them, I could hardly support my body with the leftover energy in my biceps. I slowly began making my way back to camp. On the way, I decided to craft all of the rocks into minor minions. At this point, I decided that I had enough of them. From now on, all the rocks I collect will be turned into ultra-hardened stone to stockpile for the demonic weapon. After walking through the dense shrubbery and loose soil, I eventually made my way back to my settlement. The sun had mostly set at this point and the day was all but over. My minion manager made its way over to me to give me my report. I've got the end of day report. End of day report. Total resources gathered. X1627, wood. X20, leaves. X54, meat. X3409, rocks. X7, iron. X1, gold. Other. X37, scout minions crafted. X4, minion huts built. X5, minor minions crafted. I now had 16 minor minions in total, which was quite a large number. Aside from that, I had gathered a total of 2 ultra-hardened stone and 3,409 rocks. I was around 5% of the way to crafting the sword. However, my rock gathering rate will be a lot faster in the coming days. I looked around for Chloe, who still hadn't returned. I had sent Rook and Knight with her on her expedition, so there shouldn't be any really big issues. I still worried a little that maybe their trump card, the X5th ranker, might be staying at one of the settlements, and if she coincidentally ran into him, there could be some big trouble. There was no point aimlessly worrying about it, so I started cooking dinner for the night. I set up the fire and began cooking some meat. It was the same meal I had had for a while now, but until we get Ilrich back I likely wouldn't be able to eat anything with flavor. Several minutes later, I heard a ruffling in the forest. I stood up and walked over to observe what it was. Bishop was standing beside me just in case there was any conflict. Suddenly, Chloe appeared, covered in blood and bruises. "Hey, I'm back. You're not in great shape." "Well, whose fault is that?" "Alright, so how did it go?" As she continued making her way into the settlement, I noticed that there were quite a few people following behind her. As they got closer, I noticed that they appeared slightly different. Instead of the normal clothing that we would wear, their bodies were covered with bandages. The bandages didn't seem to be for wounds or anything, they simply covered their bodies, and for some reason, they were perfectly clean. However, aside from their relatively odd attire, they looked exactly like normal people. Yeah, these are some mummies they were holding captive in their city. Mummies? I did hear about them when Ilrich was explaining to me the dynamics of the world. Yeah, apparently they can manipulate the bandages on their body or something. Okay. Well, it was nice to have some more people with us. There were 5 mummies in total, 3 girls and 2 boys from what I could see. They all looked around my age and appeared to be completely human aside from their bandages, except the fact that they were perfectly clean confused me. Just from walking around in the forest, one would expect at least some dirt to stain their attire. However, the bandages on these mummies were completely and utterly clean, pure white. I guess I should cook some more food for everyone. I took out a few more pieces of meat and began cooking them on top of the fire. The same thing for dinner again. Expect this every day for the time being. Chloe pouted. Anyways, how did the mission go? I noticed that Rook and Knight were both severely injured, and their health was below 10%. It gave me the impression that the settlement put up quite a strong fight. Well, they had quite a few soldiers who fought against me as soon as I got there. She brushed some dirt off of her dress. They weren't exactly extremely strong individually, but as a group, they did manage to deal significant damage. Did you manage to find out any more information? I didn't really do any interrogating. Well, that's fine, you can raid the other settlement that's marked on the map tomorrow. Hey, don't you think that's a bit much, even for me? I suppose so. Fine then, you can help me gather rocks for my weapon. Okie. I looked over at the mummies who were all staring at the pieces of meat I was cooking. Their faces looked in awe as they watched the fire slowly cook the steaks. I guess they mustn't have eaten very well while they were enslaved. I did want to see what use I could get out of them. So what do you guys know how to do? I asked them. They turned and looked at me blankly. I guess I was nothing but a stranger to them at the moment, so no wonder they're not too eager to speak to me. I looked over at Chloe and nudged her to speak to them. Come on guys, tell William here what you can do, she said in a soft voice. One of the boys spoke first. The three of us were trained to be soldiers. Chloe did say something about manipulating their bandages. I looked over at the boy. Can you show me what you can do? I grabbed a stick off the ground and stood up as if I was initiating swordplay. The boy hesitantly stood up and raised his arm. I noticed that some of the bandages on his arm began levitating slightly and moved around without any external forces. Ah, so you can control your bandages, that's interesting. Suddenly, the bandages unraveled and started traveling straight towards me. It latched onto my arm, wrapping itself around me. I tugged against it, but despite how it looked, it was quite strong. All right, that's enough, Chloe announced. He unraveled the bandage from my arm and it returned to him. I turned and asked the girls what they could do. I can cook. Why yeah, I know how to do housework. Same. What a conservative society. It seemed that these girl mummies were mostly taught how to be housewives or maids or something along those lines. Granted, in terms of aesthetics, they were relatively cute. I didn't exactly have many jobs for them to do, but I'm sure I'd be able to get some use out of them. As smoke filled the air, I looked at the steaks which had finished cooking. Well, we can discuss this later. Are you guys hungry? They all nodded their heads. I took the meat off of the cooking station and passed them to each of the hungry mummies and Chloe. They quickly dug into their meals and began chomping down on the steaks. So Chloe, you think we can fit 5 mummies in your hut? Huh? She was still chewing on some food in her mouth. Why all of them in my hut? Don't tell me that you want to sleep with me. I'm afraid I was thinking more along the lines of you sleeping with them. I'd be down to sleep with you. I'm fine. Hee hee, well on a serious note, I don't think they'll all fit, I'm afraid. Ugh, I guess we'll split them then. Okie. With the sleeping arrangement sorted, I finished my food and set up my minions to stay on watch during the night. I noticed that one of my scout minions had died during the day. It seemed that even with escorts, my minions were still being harassed. There wasn't a great deal I could do without fighting them all out. Now that I thought about it, the name kidnappers wasn't really all that accurate for the people who kept on attacking my minions. I guess I'd call them the cloaks since they all seemed to wear black hoodies. Anyways, after setting up my minions, I decided to call it a day. I had more grinding to do the next day. Asterisk. When I woke up, I looked down at the 2 boy mummies who were sleeping in my hut. I couldn't really be bothered to deal with them, so I left them for Chloe. I stretched a little as I got up from my bed and made my way to the rustic old door. I was greeted by the soft, mild sunlight as I took a breath of fresh air. Another day, another 6 hours of mining. Slowly, I began trekking through the forest once again. My body wasn't as sore as yesterday. It seemed that it was slowly adjusting to the hard labor. After a few minutes of pushing through grass, branches and leaves, I made it all the way to the mountain for the 3rd time. Now, every single rock I gathered would be used only to craft my demonic weapon. I took my pickaxe out of my inventory and raised it. Staring down at the dull, gray rock face, I swung my enchanted, silver pickaxe, with my entire body, slamming it into the stone. Dust filled the air and littered the ground as I collected the rocks. +2 rocks. +2 rocks. +1 rocks. +1 rocks. Again, I planted my feet on the ground and raised my pickaxe. The fresh day meant that I had more than enough energy to swing the pickaxe a few times. With no fatigue in my arms, I swung the pickaxe again, smashing the hard yet brittle stone of the mountainside. +2 rocks. +3 rocks. +1 rocks. +3 rocks. Ah, how satisfying it was. I raised my silver pickaxe again. 2 swings in, I still had plenty of energy. With the strength in my arms, I swung the relatively light pickaxe and it crashed into the stone. The waterfall of dust and stone fragments raining onto the ground was great motivation for me to keep going. I continued swinging, slamming the stone wall more and more times. After almost an hour, my arms had begun to fatigue and my swings were getting more and more lethargic. I decided that it was time for a break, so I took a seat on a smooth, large rock on the ground. I looked around at the dark green trees and occasional birds which flew by. Now that I looked at it like this new place wasn't all that bad. Taking a breath of crisp, cold air into my lungs, I exhaled, letting my worries float away. After a few minutes, I stood up again. It was time to continue mining away at this infinite stone wall. Like a water wheel, my pickaxe swung, hitting the stone over and over. Eventually, the ground was covered by another entire layer of gray. I continued to fill my inventory with rocks until I couldn't anymore. In over 2 hours, I had collected just over 2,000 rocks. Opening my crafting menu, I crafted the rocks into 2 pieces of ultra-hardened stone before I took out my pickaxe again. I still had plenty of hours to go. I could likely continue mining for over 6 hours today as the sun had just barely reached the middle of the sky. I wanted to get the new weapon sooner so I could wield it against stronger enemies. After almost another hour of continuously swinging the pickaxe, my arms were really struggling once again. I still could only go on for so long before my arms physically couldn't continue swinging. A short break usually was enough to regain most of the energy, but as the day went on it was obvious that my gathering rate was decreasing. Despite that, I was getting quite a large amount of stone. I had gathered 3 ultra-hardened stone in total and it was just barely past midday. Feeling that the strength had returned to my arms, I pulled myself up and began mining again. I felt like during the last few days, I had worked out my arms as hard as a professional bodybuilder. At this rate, I'll be much stronger without even participating in any direct combat. With more motivation at hand, I continued to mine away at the rock wall. Several hours later, the sun was beginning to set again. I felt as if the entire day had just flown by. After all this, I was somewhat curious as to what the global rankings were. Global rankings. New Gen Humans. 1. Mackenzie Franklin, 2121. 2. Noah Gate, 1445. 3. Oliver Moran, 1398. 4. Maya Keller, 1103. 5. Radine Sedeganad, 1032. Your rank, number 23. Your estimated progression score, 823. It seemed I was moving up the ranks, albeit slowly. I still wasn't exactly sure what the estimated progression score measured. Was it like a ranking of your level or maybe how capable you would be in combat? There was no way to know for sure. I felt as if it was going to be more important in the future though. There was likely more to the global rankings than being purely cosmetic. From just looking at the movement of the upper ranks, I realized that it was only going to get more difficult to claim the ranks. The gap between me and the top 5 appeared to be growing. I was surprised, especially because I had quite a resource-gathering-oriented system. Granted it wasn't purely resource-gathering, unlike Chloe's. I hoped that once I crafted the demon sword, my rank should increase somewhat. I started to make my way back once I noticed that it was starting to get dark. In total, during the entire day, I had managed to gather 7 pieces of ultra-hardened stone. It wasn't an insanely large amount, but once I collected some from my minions and Chloe, I should be well on the way to crafting the demonic sword. However, on my way back, I remembered that I also needed to form a contract with the demon. I still wasn't exactly sure how to do that, but there was a message which said I was allowed to initiate the contract-making process at any time. I would deal with that once I was closer to gathering the necessary materials. This way, I would be able to face it with more strength. Well, at least that's what I assumed it was going to test. After several minutes, I arrived back at camp and was instantly approached by my minion manager. I've got the end-of-day report. End-of-day report. Total resources gathered. X1833, wood. X20, leaves. X51, meat. X458, rocks. X19, ultra-hardened stone. X8, iron. X2, a gold. Other. X41, scout minions crafted. X5, minion huts built. At the moment, I had a total of 31 ultra-hardened stone. I was almost a third of the way to crafting the weapon. In a day or two, I should have collected enough. I looked around the camp. It seemed that the mummies weren't around and neither was Chloe. I was somewhat curious as to what they were doing, but it didn't really matter all that much. I wanted to see how much stone Chloe had collected on her expedition. Since I was already here, I decided to set up for the night. I lit the fire with some wood and began cooking some meat. I assumed that the mummies were going to be staying with us again, so I decided to cook lots of pieces of meat. Soon enough, I wanted to try to find a mummy settlement and return their children. They were all of similar age to us, but I felt like it would be a better idea to try to form good relations with the mummies than to aimlessly use them. They weren't exactly all that useful and there was a good chance that I would be rewarded for returning them. My 3 elite minions were standing by since Chloe didn't want to attack another settlement today. I decided that I would change my focus to eliminating the cloaks once I finished crafting my sword. That way, I could get Ilrich back and also prevent my minions from constantly being attacked whilst they were out gathering resources. I decided to scroll through my crafting menu as I waited for them to return, and I noticed that there were also quite a few pieces of armor I could craft. The only issue was that I had never worn armor before and it'd likely be quite heavy. I thought about it for a little bit and decided that I'd just skip out on any heavy armor at the moment. In this state, it would be more of a liability than an asset to me since it would just weigh me down. A forearm guard and shoulder pads might be useful, but even they would have limited uses. I decided that I would just focus on offense. After a few minutes, I decided to take the steaks off of the cooking station and place them on wooden plates. For some reason, Chloe and the mummies hadn't returned yet. I contemplated sending some minions to search for them, but I decided to wait a few more minutes. I looked up at the leaves which swayed hypnotically in the wind. It was pretty cold and the breeze was rather rough. Now that I thought about it, considering that the days weren't even that cold, we probably weren't even in winter. If anything, this felt like autumn or spring. It was completely possible that there would be a much more violent winter in the future, and if so, I would need to make preparations. It was probably a good idea to ask one of the other races here about this. I started to eat my steak after noticing that the others weren't returning. Almost an entire hour later, Chloe finally trudged through the forest back into the settlement. The mummies were all following behind her. However, I noticed that the number of mummies had increased. "You guys came back pretty late," I said. "Yeah, I was out gathering resources and then we found more mummies running around the forest," she replied. "Oh, are they like lost or something?" Apparently they had run away from captivity a few days before I attacked. "Ah, I see. Apparently they know where their main village is. That's perfect, you can take them there tomorrow. Are you sure you don't want to use them?" "Nah, just make sure you take any rewards they want to give us." "Hee, alright." I pointed at the several plates of steaks that I had prepared earlier and they all made their way over to begin having their dinner. The night went by without any major issues. Until the next difficulty increase, my current army of minions would be enough to look over us every night. This allowed me to get plenty of sleep to recover from the hard manual labor of the days. The previous night, Chloe had collected 6 ultra-hardened stone worth of rocks and a plethora of other gems and ores. Granted, it wasn't an incredibly large amount, but she was likely multitasking with all of the mummies. Most of the time, I would just sell the items that she gave me. I didn't really have anything I wanted to craft with them anyways, and I wanted to stock up on tokens in case something really good appeared in the shop. Now that the next day had come, Chloe was off with the mummies to try to find their home and I was left once again to make my way to the gloriously laborious mountainside where I would spend the majority of my day. It was relatively early in the morning, but Chloe and the mummies had already left, so I decided to make my way as well. It was the same walk as always, walking on the same path, passing the same trees and trekking through the same vegetation which had slowly become worn down from the walking. After a few minutes, I made it to the mountainside once again and prepared to chip away at the fragile yet indestructible rock. I took out my pickaxe and raised it up to my chest. New day, new me. Full of energy, I swung the pickaxe into the stone, smashing it and crumbling the weak, pitiful mountainside. Rock fragments flew everywhere and I collected the fallen resources. +2 rocks. +1 rocks. +1 rocks. +1 rocks. Ah, the beautiful sight filled my eyes as I saw the number of rocks in my inventory increase. I chipped away at the rock wall like I was some sort of maniac. To any outsider, I was just aimlessly smashing away at a wall of stone for hours on end. I was now religiously mining rocks like it was in my faith, like the god of the world was someone with a rock-breaking fetish and I was trying to please them with every inch of my body. I cut away at the rock like I was kicking over the sandcastles built by every single child on Earth. It was as satisfying as popping bubble wrap, as satisfying as cutting a loaf of bread perfectly. The numbers filled my eyes as I continued to rotate my body, smashing my pickaxe into the gray wall of sediment. +1 rocks. +3 rocks. +4 rocks. +1 rocks. For almost 2 hours straight, I swung my arms nonstop. It was at the point that I felt like I was trying to pull them through mud. It was like I was trying to raise a barbell every time I moved my body. Even the light pickaxe felt like a full bag of rice. I really needed a break now. After one more swing, I dropped my pickaxe to the ground and took a seat on a nearby rock. I took in a big breath, then exhaled, then took in a deep breath, then exhaled. I was pulling oxygen into my body like a vacuum sucking a pile of beans up from the ground. I had overexerted myself. I shouldn't go on for so long without a break. Finally, after a few minutes, my body managed to recover from the intense strain and I was ready to pick myself up and gather more rocks again. I summoned my enchanted, silver pickaxe, into my hands and braced myself for impact. The tip of the pickaxe cut into the rock wall, swiping fragments and dust onto the ground. +2 rocks. +1 rocks. +2 rocks. +1 rocks. I had gathered quite a large amount of rocks. Well, obviously I did. I had spent hours on end, looking into a rock face like it was a mirror, and I chipped away at it with all of my strength. An hour later, I took another break and looked down at the path I had walked to get here. Even just after 3 days, there was a significant imprint on the ground. You could easily tell exactly which way I walked just by looking at the slightly distorted vegetation and print in the dirt. Once again, I lifted myself up and raised my pickaxe. Maybe I was a psychopath. Twisting my body, I swung the pickaxe into the wall. For several more hours, I continued this cycle of mining and resting until the sun had all but set for the day again. The sky went from bright blue to a darker purple-crimson. The clouds had begun to fill the sky and the moon was soon to show its face. After a few more swings, me and my arms had decided that we'd had enough. I gathered more rocks than the previous day, and after converting the last of my rocks into ultra-hardened stone, I took a deep breath and prepared to make my way back to the settlement. In total, I had gathered 10 ultra-hardened stone. As I made my way back, I shook my arms a little bit since they were slightly numb from all that harsh exercise I did. If I wanted to push myself up the ranks, this was what I needed to do. After a short hike back to the settlement, I saw Chloe sitting by herself beside the fire. She looked up at me as I made my way out of the forest and smiled. "Hey, you're back." "Yeah, did you manage to deliver them home?" I asked. "Yes, their chief gave me this." She pulled out a little pile of bandages and showed it to me. Apparently it's an item that speeds up healing on the area it's applied to. It also provides protection in general when you wrap it around an area. That'll be useful for the future. An item that speeds up healing and also provides protection would be quite useful. It was light and soft, it could provide protection without being a liability. I touched it a little bit before pulling up my sleeve and wrapping it around my arm. I began preparing dinner for the day. My minion manager made its way over to me. "I've got the end of day report." End of day report. Total resources gathered. X 1994, wood. X 20, leaves. X 41, meat. X 654, rocks. X 23, ultra-hardened stone. X 9, iron. X 3, gold. Other. X 47, scout minions crafted. X 6, minion huts built. My minions had managed to gather 23 more ultra-hardened stone, alongside Chloe's extra 8 ultra-hardened stone that she had gathered. My total was now up to 72. I only needed 28 more before I had enough to craft my demonic sword. I finished my dinner and rested my body for some action the next day. As I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside, I slowly picked myself up from my bed. My body was still a little sore from all the physical activity, but it was nothing debilitating. At the moment, I would get enough resources from my minions and Chloe so that I didn't need to go out and gather any rocks myself. However, half of the recipe was the contract with the devil itself. I looked at the recipe again. Crafting a demonic weapons. Mayuri Lukii, sword. 1x, Mayuri contract. 100x, ultra-hardened stone. So I needed to get a contract with the devil Mayuri in order to craft the weapon. I had a look at the menu, which had a separate section called Contracts. Contracts. Attempt a contract with Mayuri. Begin. You have entered Mayuri's world. Suddenly, I was transported to an entirely new space. It was filled with nothing at all. No matter where I looked, my eyes were filled with the hopelessness of emptiness. It was a realm consisting of nothing. What was this place? Finally, after a few seconds, I felt my feet touch a surface. I looked down at the ground, which was completely white. Like an experimentation facility or maybe a newly built house, except everything was white. I placed my hands on the ground and pulled myself up. Standing uncomfortably on my own 2 feet, I began walking forwards, step by step, one at a time. As I took a few short steps forwards, the entire surroundings changed. I was transported into a seemingly normal neighborhood. However, I couldn't move or interact with the surroundings. I could only watch as the area moved around like a movie. I was looking down at some ordinary houses and an ordinary road. Suddenly, the area began moving. I looked down at my body, but the body wasn't mine, it was that of some girl. I was looking through the lenses of someone else's eyes. They began walking down the road. For some reason, I could feel every sense they were feeling, the chilliness of the wind, the texture of the clothes on my body, the warmth of the sun. I could feel it all. All of a sudden, words appeared in front of my eyes. Act 1 Scene 1, where? Sadness. Animosity. Courage. Rage. Love. Despair. Act 1 Scene 2, nurture. You are worthless. Why was I here? These powers of mine. No. I must find something else to nurture. What was this? I felt as if I could hear this person's thoughts in my own head. I couldn't even tell which thoughts were mine and which thoughts were theirs. I was looking at the world through the eyes of this girl. Act 1 Scene 3, eyes. Flames tore through the walls of our house. Shards of glass smash into the ground, and the flames flickered, changing in veracity. Smoke filled the air. I watched as everything we once had slowly sizzled into ashes. It's okay, at least my family isn't inside. It's okay. It's okay, at least my family isn't inside. Why was I lying to myself? Despair. The area around me lights up. Light blinds everyone and everything around me. People frantically cover their eyes in pain. The earth around me cracks and splinters. Trees, telephone poles, people, cars, and houses, all lifted into the sky. A whirlwind of objects forms, with me at the center. I couldn't help but feel the sensation of a tear flowing down my cheek. Act 1 Scene 4, Hand. Oh well. Such is the nature of my power. I suppose I'll destroy everything. What was the point anyways? It's not like I have anything to live for. Act 1 Scene 5, Heart. Mayuri. Amongst the chaos, someone calls out to me. Stop this. Why would I care about what these selfish, hateful people want? I'm sorry. There's nothing for you to apologize for, boy, just accept this fate. All your emotions. The whirlwind of things expands, engulfing everything in its vicinity. I'll hold them for you. The voice of the boy quietens. I feel your despair. Houses smash into each other, sections of earth rip out of the ground. I'll give you something to live for. Suddenly the voice of the boy is clearer. Lean on me, I'll share your emotions. You're lying. Go away. The battered and bruised boy grips my arm. I'll feel everything that you are feeling. The mayhem continues, expanding, destroying everything. Suddenly, the boy pulls me into his arms in an embrace. Mayuri, I'll go through this with you. Suddenly, the chaos stops. Everything went white. Asterisk. Crap. It took me a few seconds to regain my composure. I was back in the pure white world. What did I just witness? It looked like someone's memories. They must have been Mayuri's memories. I ran my hands across my body to check that I was back in my own body. Her thoughts were gone from my head. I took a few moments to slow my breathing. Why did I see those memories? Her house was burning down, she began destroying everything around her. After that, someone called out to her, before everything stopped. I struggled to understand. Again, I pulled myself up off the ground and began walking around once again. My head was aching slightly after witnessing that memory. The feeling of hearing her thoughts and feeling those unnatural sensations was an eerie feeling. My balance was a little wobbly at first as I tried to move around this empty world. There was nothing to look at, nothing to keep my balance with. I raised my around to my sides and walked like I was on a tightrope. Where was I meant to go? Suddenly, I was again transported to another place. This time I was inside a school, the bright sun and clean green grass filled my view. More words appeared in front of my eyes. Act 4 Scene 2, Recess. The bell rings for recess. I watch from a distance. The awkward interactions between Noah and his girlfriends. I can't help but wonder. Would I be happier? Would I even be happy to see him again? I walk around the courtyard of the school. Now that Sasha doesn't spend much time with me, I feel kind of lonely. Sitting alone on a bench, I see a boy. Something about the boy catches my eye. His curly black hair, his blue eyes, where have I seen this before? I heard that there had been a new transfer student, but I had not actually seen him. For some reason, he seemed familiar. No way. No way. Could it possibly be? If there was any time for me to speak to someone, it would be now. Hi. Hey. You're the new transfer student? Yeah. Oh. I had not actually spoken to many boys at this point. What was I even meant to say? Please, boy, say something to me. So do you like the school at the moment? What was I thinking? Who at this age asks questions like this? I'm as dry as the Sahara Desert. I suppose I do. What the hell is this? Why can't I communicate like a normal person? Think. Surely there's something interesting to talk about. The boy opened his mouth to speak. Thank goodness he's asking me something now. So, what's your name? As soon as I hear those questions, I instantly panic, looking down at the ground. I can't help but blush. What am I doing? This is the easiest question to answer on the entire earth. This might not even be that boy. Come on, I'm better than this. My name's Mayuri. Oh, Mayuri, that's a nice name. My heart was beating faster than ever now. What the heck am I thinking? That response is something out of a fast food worker's dictionary. Why am I getting so worked up about this? There's no way he would just show up at my school. Thanks. Damn it, I didn't even ask for his name. You know what, it's now or never. Hey, can I sit next to you? I'm literally going to die of embarrassment. Why am I so forward? We literally just met. Sure, I suppose. Why am I doing this? I suppose I need some shame in my life, don't I? Well, I guess I'll take a seat now that I've gone this far. So, what's your name? It's Jack. Oh, hi Jack. I guess this will be the second beginning of our story. Asterisk. I was beyond confused now. Why was I seeing these random memories? It was so awkward. These thoughts that were even mine were constantly forced into my head. This girl had a really weird thought pattern. Why were these memories being shown to me? I tried as hard as I could to comprehend the memories I was being shown. Was this some sort of test? What was I meant to do? As soon as the memory ended, I was again transported to the empty world. Every time I was transported here, I felt as if I was in the middle of nowhere. Everything was just pure white, there was nothing to do, no puzzle, no combat, nothing, just emptiness. I looked around, trying to find something. Yet no matter where I looked, it was like I staring into the center of the sun, there was nothing to see. Again, the scene changed and I was transported to the school. Act 4 Scene 3, Lunch. Ugh, I couldn't concentrate on any of my classes after all that embarrassment at recess. I bet he thinks I'm a weirdo now. I walked to my locker and grabbed my lunch. Or so I thought. Turns out I did not bring any lunch. This day is just getting worse and worse. I walk out towards the courtyard. Unexpectedly, the boy was standing outside my house room. Hey, Mayuri. Aw hey. So I don't really have anyone to eat lunch with, so I was wondering if you wanted to eat lunch with me. Suddenly my mind went blank. Why was this boy here? Isn't he supposed to be cringing at me? Oh God, why did it have to be today of all days I forget my lunch? I am really sorry but I forgot my lunch today. Why did I say that? I can still sit with him. I'm an idiot. I guess I'll go have a cry in the toilets. That's okay. I mean, I'll buy lunch for you, my treat. What is going on at this point? I don't even know what is happening. You know what? Forget everything. I'll just do what my heart desires. Seriously? Well, that would be nice. I promise I'll pay you back. Don't worry about it, it's my treat. We awkwardly walk towards the canteen. Is a BLT okay? Yes, thank you so much by the way. Honestly it's okay, don't worry so much about it. I looked down at my shoes. I felt something I never thought I would feel again. Well, I guess I'll wait for you at the seats. Alright. I walk over towards the seats. Everything went white. I fought to catch my breath. I didn't understand any of this. It was like I was watching some poorly written rom-com, but just a few scenes prior, I was shown something quite traumatizing. Was there some pattern I needed to find? I braced myself to be moved into the next memory. I assumed that I would be watching quite a few more memories before I managed to figure out what was happening. Not long after, my eyes were shown another scene. This time, however, instead of looking through Mayuri's senses, I was simply floating in the air, intangible, no one could see or notice me, but I could look down and see the view. Act 4 Scene 4, Boy. Jack waits patiently in line. Sweat discreetly dripped down his neck. He has had his heart broken in the past. He has been drawn away from his classmates ever since the incident. Maybe this girl would be the one to heal him. He felt something special, maybe he found someone he could trust. Next please. Just 2 BLTs and 2 large orange juices please. Was that all for today? Maybe I'll have this little cupcake as well. Sure, that'll be $13.50. Jack holds the food in his hands, delicately balancing the little cupcake on top. He walks over to the seats. He looks around for Mayuri. She was not sitting where he was expecting her. That was okay. He continued looking around. Gradually more frantically. Where was she, he thought. He desperately searched around. Where was Mayuri? Not this again, he thought, not this again. Where was Mayuri? His breathing was irregular. Panting for air. Desperate. Please note this again, he thought. Mayuri, why did you abandon me? He stood still in the middle of the seating area. Everything went white again. Why? I don't understand, what am I looking for? All these scenes, all these memories, why was I being shown them? Without much delay, I was shown some very large text in front of my eyes before I was transported once again. Act 4 Scene 5, Boy. A few moments earlier. I watched as Jack waited in line. I'll pick a very obvious spot so he can easily find me after he gets the food. Wait, is this a date? I've never actually been on one before, so I don't really know. I quickly fix up my skirt and part the hair on my face. My heart was beating faster than ever. For some reason, I couldn't help but smile. Mayuri, help. It was Sasha. Wait, I'm in the middle of something. This is really serious, you have to come with me. But Sasha grabbed my arm and pulled me out of the canteen. Sasha did not lessen her grip. She pulled me with all her strength until we reached her house room. She scrambled in her locker until she pulled out a phone that was not hers. This is Noah's phone. I see, are you going to return it to him? I'm really busy. Yes. No. Look at this. She swiftly unlocked Noah's phone. After frantically tapping the screen, she shows me a private message with him and Millie. I can't believe this. He's gone and gotten a third girlfriend. I really don't have time FO. That scoundrel. Was two not enough for him, he just had to go and get a third? I was not going to hang around for these shenanigans. We can talk about this later, I need to go back to the canteen. Before Sasha could utter another word, I rushed off towards the canteen. I'm so sorry, Jack, I'll be there as fast as I can. I sprinted as fast as I could. As I reached the canteen, I desperately searched the seating area. Jack was nowhere to be seen. All I found were 2 BLTs, 2 bottles of orange juice and a half-crushed muffin abandoned on a table. I was again returned to the world of emptiness. My brain, what was I looking at? Suddenly, I heard a voice coming from everywhere. In this pure white abyss, someone was speaking to me. Hey there, I assume you've come to make a contract with me. The voice was deep and distorted, but just slightly. I was able to make out the fact that the voice belonged to Mayuri, the devil, and the person within the memories. Yes, I replied. Pay attention to the next memory, if you don't figure it out, there'll be consequences. As suddenly as it came, the voice disappeared. A few moments later, I was moved back into another memory. Act 4 Scene 6, Where is he? I quickly scramble out of the canteen. I can still find him. Why is there no one who can help me when I'm in need? I run into the middle of the courtyard, looking like a fool. I randomly look around, hoping that he would just be here somewhere. What was I doing? Hey Mayuri, what are you looking for? He quickly sensed the panic in the situation. It was Oliver, he was with a few friends, I hadn't talked to him before. Did you see Jack come through here somewhere? Jack? Is he that new kid? Yes, have you seen him? Yeah, I saw him running into the boys' toilets, he must have really needed to go. That's not the reason, but thanks, Oliver. Thanks. I walked towards the boys' toilets. Well, he's probably in there. I'll just wait out here. It's the least I can do. It all went white again. I need to think. What was I looking for? Something here is off. All these memories, they were all connected, even the memory of the catastrophe. The boy she was looking for. She seemed to think it was Jack, but for some reason, it didn't sit well with me. His behavior, her behavior. I needed to think. Hey, are you ready to answer my question? Asked the voice, echoing through this infinite domain. Wait, I got it. Yes, I'm ready. Suddenly, a girl appeared in front of me. She was wearing a dark purple dress that dropped down to just over her thighs. Aside from that, she wore nothing else. It was overly simplistic, however. On the top of her head, there were 2 small horns. She was a devil, so I guess horns were part of the package. She looked down at me before showing a sly smile. Here's the question, she stood up her on toes, what was wrong with the memories? There was a moment of silence. After the 3rd memory, I realized it, but only during the 4th memory did I really see what was really wrong. I chuckled. The boy from the disaster, it's not Jack, is it? Suddenly, her entire expression changed and then she started to laugh. Impressive. It's Oliver, isn't it? She then seemed shocked but didn't respond for a little while. Am I right? I asked. Yes, you're correct. The two of us shared a moment of silence. Do you want to see the last memory? She asked. Yes. For the final memory, I was once again transported into the past body of Mayuri, living through her grief, her pain and her redemption as if it were my own. The surroundings changed, no longer white, I was looking out as if it were any normal day. Act 4 Scene 7, Jack. The bell rings for the end of lunch. After a few moments, Jack exits the toilets. He jolts in shock as he witnesses me sitting outside the toilets. Mayuri. What are you doing here? Oh well, he did this to me once before, I suppose I'm allowed to do it to him. I run towards him and jump at him, catching him in an embrace. Thank you so much for what you did to me 5 years ago. His expression is ice cold. This isn't right. You are Mayuri, are you sure you have the right person? Wait, what? You saved me all those years ago, right? I don't remember doing something like that. Wait, what? You don't remember? The catastrophe? You mean the one that happened in the city? I wasn't even here 5 years ago. It wasn't him? No way. He slowly drags me off his body. Is this why you've been being so friendly with me? Silence fills the air between us. Well, I'm not the boy you're talking about, I'm sorry. I stand frozen as I watch him slowly walk away from me. His face showed a cold expression. What have I done? That was it. The final memory. Well, it didn't seem like the end. If anything, it felt like the start of something else. I found myself once again sitting on the blank white floor of Mayuri's world. The long-haired girl with horns on her head looked down at me from a few meters away. Was that really it? I asked. That's it for now, there's more to it, but I'll explain in a second. She took a few steps forward. So, what is it that you desire? She asked. I want power. Is that it? For now it is. She giggled a little. Sure, I can give you power, but I'll be taking something in exchange. Her voice was deep and amplified. She pointed to her head. I'll be taking some of your memories. Are you fine with that? There was a slight echo to her voice. It seemed to travel quite well throughout this edgeless world. It was smooth and calming. Yes, I don't have any good memories anyways. Are you sure? You do have a lot of bad memories, but I can also see some good memories in here. Those, good memories. I don't need them either. Ah, well in that case, I'm sure we can form a contract. She stretched her arm out towards me. Don't worry, I won't take your memories all at once. Whenever you desire more power, call out to me and I will provide, in exchange for more of your memories. Asterisk. I was back in my settlement. I looked around. I saw all of my minion huts scattered around the area, in a somewhat uniform way. I saw the 2 main huts, the makeshift cooking station, the fire pit, my elite minions. They were all here, waiting for me. As the cold air of the apocalyptic world brushed against my skin, I finally realized that I was back. In my hand, I held a sheet of paper. It was extremely tough. It felt as if it could never be broken. On it, there were the words, Mayuri contract. Ah, well that was over. I looked up at the setting sun. That process had taken me pretty much the entire day. Now all that was left was to collect the remaining resources. As the night drew near, I recalled most of my minions. At one stage, I would like to allow my resource-gathering minions to continue collecting resources during the night, although I still couldn't think of an effective way to do so. I lit the fire and waited for everyone to return. The fire flickered in my eyes as my minion manager made its way toward me. I've got the end-of-day report. End-of-day report. Total resources gathered. X2100, wood. X20, leaves. X38, meat. X755, rocks. X27, ultra-hardened stone. X11, iron. X4, gold. Other. X52, scout minions crafted. X8, minion huts built. Ah, I was just slightly off the amount of craft the sword. I guess I'd have to wait until Chloe returned. What a hassle. I continued to sit on a log, staring at the hypnotic flame. I was still trying to fully come to terms with what I had just seen in Mayuri's world. There was still so much I didn't know about everything. Finally, after almost an hour, Chloe returned. Hey, William. You're back. I sure am. Did you manage to collect enough resources for your demonic sword? I got the contract today. I still need one more, ultra-hardened stone, though. Ah, of course. She grabbed one out of her inventory and passed it to me. Thanks. With 100 ultra-hardened stone in my inventory, I opened my crafting menu and scrolled to the demonic weapons section. Finally, after all these days of work, I would finally be able to make the weapon. Asterisk. The resources disappeared from my inventory as I began crafting the sword. There was a large cloud of gray smoke and gas gathered in my palm. For several seconds, the flares of dust and smoke and various other particles bounced around in my hand. It appeared to be pulling energy from the space around it. After a few seconds, a long, deep purple rapier was conjured into my hand. It was incredibly lustrous and hard, yet surprisingly light. The guard was very eloquent, with metal twirling and twisting like a piece of modern art. The lush, dark purple blade reminded me of the dress that Mayuri was wearing. A rough, beige sheath appeared on my hip. It seemed that I couldn't put the weapon in my inventory, so the only place to store it was in its sheath. It was truly amazing. You have obtained one of the 7 demonic weapons. You cannot enchant your demonic weapon, but it grows with you. Communicate with your demon to obtain more power. As I looked in my crafting menu, it was true that the recipe had completely disappeared. I guess only 7 demonic weapons can exist at one time. I wondered if it was possible to get more than one. I assumed it was, although I didn't really want to go through all that pain again when I've already got a strong weapon. I raised Mayuri Luki and swung it around a little. It was really light and moved through the air like a butterfly. It was much easier to wield than the Yi silver sword, and felt much cleaner and much more durable. I walked over to a tree and swung it laterally. The blade cut through the trunk of the tree like a hot knife through butter. It ripped through every fiber within that thick tree trunk like they weren't even there. The dark, purple blade was extremely fine and immensely sharp. The tree toppled over and was caught in the leaves of the surrounding trees. Apparently, each blade was meant to have its own special ability, but in order to do so, I would have to call for my demon. The night was deep on its way and my minions were already prepared to fight the zombies. I didn't really need to use my weapon or even fight at all since my minions were strong enough to take care of them for now. I was going to test out its special ability as I would likely need it against the cloaks. I looked around at what I could use as a dummy before catching Chloe in my line of sight. Hey Chloe, come over here. Don't tell me you're going to use me as a testing dummy for your new weapon. I would never. She began making her way over to me. I signaled for her to stand on the side facing into the forest. I didn't want to accidentally destroy any of my buildings in the crossfire. I concentrated my thoughts and tensed my body as I held Mayuri in front of me. I held onto the grip as hard as I could. Cut her down, Mayuri. I swung the blade and a thick purple aura gathered all around it. A huge shockwave was produced as air concentrated in front of the blade. The shockwave blasted into Chloe as she summoned her diamond shield and tried to block the attack. Even so, the attack was strong enough to cause her to completely lose hold of her shield and fall to the ground. Several trees behind her were also smashed down, falling down to the dirt and causing a chain reaction of collapses. Hey, I thought you said you weren't going to use me as a dummy, she said as she wiped the dirt off of her dress. I must have accidentally hit you in the crossfire. Hee hee, you'd hurt an innocent little girl like me? You're a sadist. I walked towards her. By the way, when I was hit by your attack, I now have this effect on me and I can't seem to get anything out of my inventory. You can't pull anything out of your inventory? Yeah. I helped Chloe to her feet and picked her shield up off the ground. Suddenly, I heard a feminine voice coming directly from my head. That effect is called System Disable. It stops the victim from being able to use some things in their system, such as opening their inventory or upgrading their system for a few seconds. Ah, I see. It's strong, but don't use it too much now. After a little while, you should feel some pain in your arms. Think of it as a restriction or a drawback. The pain gets worse the more times you use it in a row. Interesting, it was a really powerful ability, especially against other people. I just needed to use it at the right times. There wasn't any need for me to stay up at night as my minions were enough to take care of the zombies. Asterisk. I was woken up by the sound of my hand smacking my sheath which I had placed next to me on the bed. Ow. Oh well, it was about time I got up for the day anyways. I pulled myself up and stretched out my arms, relieving some of the overnight soreness. After that, I made my way to the door of the hut. I had decided that I would be dealing with the cloaks. I opened the door and made my way to Chloe's hut. I knocked on the hard wood of the hut and a dense thump sound rippled inside. A few footsteps later and the door was opened and I was greeted by a bright, smiling Chloe. She had changed into some different clothes which was quite surprising. I guess she might have some system shop or something else that gave her new clothes. She was wearing a concerningly large t-shirt and shorts which were hardly visible. You're dressed pretty casually, I said. Ah, thanks for the compliment. It wasn't a compliment. Anyways, get ready, we're going cloak hunting today. Cloak hunting? Ah yeah, that was the name I gave the attackers or kidnappers and stuff. That's a good name. Thanks, anyways, are you ready? Sure, I'm ready now. She made her way outside and the two of us walked towards the forest. I kept my 3 elite minions by my side and commanded my minion manager to take over whilst I was gone. I gave it permission to make decisions while I was away. I had already set up most of my minions for their expeditions for the day, but I worried that I might not be back by night. My minion manager has full authority to maneuver and organize my minions for the night so that they don't get killed by zombies while I'm gone. With that, I was fully prepared to go out. With Mayuri on my hip, my group began making our way into the deep dark forest which still gathered hardly any light despite it being daytime. We trudged through bushes and vegetation, pulling out feet up with every step as we ripped them away from the greenery. Where are we going? Chloe asked. We're going to the other settlement. Ah, the other one of the map? Yes. Based on the awkward scale on which the map was drawn, I guessed that the journey would be somewhat of a long one. However, it was pretty hard to tell since the map wasn't that precise. We continued trekking through the forest, walking through dirt and rocks and tree roots. We practically stepped on a different surface for every step we took. We continued on the path for several minutes. Aside from countless different plants, we did not manage to find anything interesting. Following the map, we continued on our hike, pushing forwards through the rough terrain. After almost half an hour, I finally saw something that looked like a settlement in the distance. There were several wooden huts and a few people walking around. From this distance, I couldn't exactly tell what they were doing, but just based on the number of people I could see, this was a relatively large settlement, much larger than mine. The two of us hid under some bushes as we observed them from a distance. I kept my elite minions a few meters away as we tried to stay unnoticed. Based on a few seconds of observation, I could see a few people walking around building some structures. However, the majority of people appeared to be putting on some dark hoodies, emblematic of their group. There was a very large container in the center of their settlement where a plethora of weapons was stored and several people appeared to be picking their preferred weapons out. After a few moments, there was a person wearing a pure white hoodie, in contrast with the rest of the group. My assumption was that they were a leader of some sort. I ordered Knight to come closer and try to shoot the white-hooded person. It took aim and fired its arrow, zipping through the air. I should have expected, though, that it would miss. The arrow alerted all of them of our presence and I decided that I'd just show myself at this point. Chloe and I stood up and began making our way down the hill, toward their settlement. We were met by the scathing glares of a large group of dark-hooded people. I drew my manhwarecap and prepared to fight. Chloe had also grabbed her platinum sword out of her inventory and got into a fighting stance as we continued down. I sent Rook ahead in order to clear some of their attention. There was some shouting from their direction before we were flanked by another group. It seemed they already had a group of people who had begun trekking into the forest. We were now being engaged from two directions. None of us had actually engaged in combat, however, as we observed each other from a relatively short distance. I tensed my body as I prepared to fight several humans at once. All of these humans likely had systems that I had no information on. I would need to stay cautious until I was able to accurately identify the strengths and weaknesses of everyone's system. I kept an especially close eye on the white-hooded leader. They probably had the strongest system which would pose a threat to me. "You ready?" asked Chloe. "Yep." I sent Rook to charge into their pack. The minion rushed down into their front line as they rapidly began pulling weapons out of their inventories. There were a variety of weapons from spears to scythes to swords. I also began noticing some weird phenomenons which I could attribute only to the use of systems. Chloe and I looked at each other before we split up. She would take care of the second force which was coming from the side. I would go down into the settlement and fight their main forces. I left Knight with Chloe and took Bishop with me as we made our way towards Rook, which was already in combat with several of the cloaks. This was going to be a grueling fight.
Thank you so much. Visit us more for more novels, please. Like, subscribe to our channel.